Welcome to Starship TV, the end of borders and the rise of a united humanity, a vision led by the United States Constitution. National borders have always been fluid. They are not carved into the earth. They are drawn by human agreement and erased by history. Once formed through empire, war, and negotiation, these lines today are being quietly undone by economics, migration, and survival. Around the world, nations are drowning in debt. From Latin America to Africa, from Southeast Asia to Eastern Europe, many states have borrowed beyond their means, mortgaging their future for short-term relief. These debts often come with conditions: economic restructuring, loss of control over infrastructure, and dependency on foreign powers. Sovereignty, in such cases, becomes a fiction. A nation is no longer truly free if it cannot make decisions without creditor approval, or if its people suffer from chronic poverty, hunger, and instability. The reality is stark: a nation that cannot govern, protect, or sustain its people has already lost its sovereignty, even if its flag still flies. At the same time, millions are fleeing these failing nations, voting with their feet for a better life. Their destination is clear. Across generations and continents, people choose to leave everything behind for a chance to live under the freedoms, laws, and protections of stronger nations, chief among them, the United States. This mass movement is not simply a migration crisis. It is a natural correction in the global order. When populations abandon their homeland en masse, they signal that the current system has failed. And if a government has lost the faith of its own people, it stands on borrowed time. Rather than resist this shift, a new model can be embraced: a peaceful, structured transition in which failing nations surrender their sovereignty voluntarily in exchange for integration into a stronger, functioning system. Under this model, the United States becomes more than a destination. It becomes a stabilizing force in a world where too many governments no longer work. These mergers would not be acts of conquest, but of cooperation. A debt-ridden, unstable nation could offer its land, resources, and administrative control to the United States, surrendering its broken system in return for something its people have already chosen with their feet: access to American life, law, and opportunity. The United States, in turn, assumes the population and debt, but also gains the territory, raw materials, infrastructure, and global influence. This is a fair trade in the new global order. A failed nation, already dependent on foreign aid, is not giving up something whole, but exchanging collapse for continuity. In effect, the United States absorbs both the burden and the benefit, and its citizens are compensated through new territory, new markets, and new strategic advantages. Over time, more nations will recognize this path not as surrender, but as evolution. As the world consolidates, politically, economically, digitally, borders begin to blur. Global migration, automation, and AI governance render traditional divisions obsolete. In this emerging world, the U.S. Constitution becomes the backbone of a planetary framework. Its enduring principles: freedom of speech, rule of law, due process, balance of powers, offer a stable foundation upon which a global society can be built. The United States, born in revolution, becomes the keystone of a new voluntary federation of territories, cultures, and peoples. As labor is increasingly handled by machines and AI systems manage logistics, production, and administration, the human role evolves. A world free from material scarcity, where basic needs are universally met, frees people to explore, create, learn, and connect. In such a world, borders are no longer walls. They are memories of an age when survival meant division. And when we take our next steps, to Mars, to orbital cities, to moons and exoplanets, we will not go as scattered tribes, each waving its own flag. We will go as a unified species, carrying forward a single, proven system. We will go as heirs of a document that once governed 13 colonies and now may guide humanity itself. This is not science fiction. It is the natural progression of history. As more nations lose the ability to stand on their own, they will reach out. And as their people already reach for America, so too will their governments, seeking structure, stability, and meaning. Debt, population loss, and economic collapse are not simply challenges. They are signals that sovereignty, in many places, has already passed the point of no return. Rather than cling to a broken model, these nations can choose partnership, peace, and a path forward. And in doing so, they will become part of something greater. Not just a stronger nation, but a new civilization. A civilization without borders. A civilization that reaches the stars together. You're watching Starship TV. Now let's continue with the details about our world and the realities of our world. But first, take a moment and like, comment, and subscribe if you find this content of interest and value. National borders. The ever-changing lines of sovereignty. Introduction. National borders are not fixed. They are impermanent reflections of political, economic, and social conditions. Throughout history, countries have dissolved, merged, been absorbed, or transformed due to war, debt, population loss, or technological change. In today's world, where nations are increasingly interconnected, failing states are losing control not only of their economies and institutions, but also of their populations. This report explores the current and future realities of sovereignty, border erosion, national mergers, and the possible emergence of a post-border global society. 1. The historical instability of borders. Borders have always shifted. Empires crumbled. Colonies gained independence. Nations merged or split. These transformations show that borders are not permanent. They are maintained only by functional sovereignty, the ability to govern, defend, feed, and sustain a population. 2. Modern pressures breaking sovereignty. A. National debt and economic collapse. Over 100 countries are trapped in sovereign debt crises, rendering them dependent on aid, foreign infrastructure loans, or military protection. B. Resource scarcity and environmental stress. Nations with little access to food, water, and energy are increasingly vulnerable to collapse, especially under pressure from climate change and desertification. C. Financial dependency and external control. Foreign creditors, militaries, and corporations often wield more influence than the host nation's own government, compromising true sovereignty. 3. Population loss, the death of sovereignty. A. Mass migration as a vote of no confidence. When citizens flee a country en masse, they are expressing a powerful truth: they no longer believe their nation can provide a future. Syria, Venezuela, Haiti, and parts of Central America have experienced mass exoduses. Entire generations of workers, students, and professionals have relocated to stronger nations, especially the United States, Canada, Germany, and Australia. B. The demographic collapse of failing nations. When a country loses too much of its population, its tax base vanishes, its labor force weakens, its military potential declines, its government becomes irrelevant to the lives of its former citizens. Sovereignty, once defined by borders and armies, becomes meaningless if the people no longer remain within those borders or recognize its authority. 4. A merger model. Weaker nations joining stronger ones. A. The case for merging with the United States. The United States is consistently the most desired destination for migrants from failing or struggling nations. This suggests that many people vote with their feet for U.S. governance, infrastructure, security, and opportunity. These flows represent a natural gravitational pull toward stability. B. Land for access. A sovereignty exchange model. Rather than struggling to manage endless illegal immigration and refugee crises, a new model could be proposed. A failing nation voluntarily merges with the United States, transferring sovereignty, land, and natural resources in exchange for access, legal status, safety, education, and economic opportunity. How it works. The weaker country offers formal merger, surrendering its sovereign status. The U.S. absorbs the population, granting tiered access to citizenship, education, and healthcare. The land of the former nation becomes new U.S. territory, with resource rights, real estate, ports, and infrastructure going into federal management. Debts and liabilities are assumed, but in return, the resources and industries of the former state are redistributed or auctioned to the U.S. public as compensation for the burden. Examples of what the U.S. gains: strategic territory, military, logistical, trade routes, natural resources, lithium, oil, farmland, water, new markets and expansion zones, geopolitical leverage. Examples of what the failing nation gains: stability and governance under the U.S. Constitution, access to education, infrastructure, jobs, and federal aid, a future for their population they could not build alone. 5. Challenges of the merger model. For the United States: financial burden of integrating poor populations, political resistance from those fearing dilution of American identity, security risks from absorbing unstable regions. For the merged nations: loss of cultural and historical identity, possible exploitation of resources by corporations, potential second-class citizenship issues during transition. But for nations already collapsing, this model provides a peaceful, structured exit ramp from failed statehood. 6. The long-term result: a world of fewer nations. As mergers and absorptions proceed, the world may evolve into A handful of continent-scale federations, the US-EU, China Pan-Africa, or eventually, a single global framework governed by shared digital ID, universal automation, AI-run distribution of resources, post-labor governance. 7. A borderless post-labor world. When sovereignty becomes obsolete. In a future where AI performs all governance functions, robotics and automation handle nearly all work, distribution of food, housing, and healthcare is globalized. National borders become a hindrance, not a necessity. U.S. constitutional framework that works across the stars. At the heart of this future is the U.S. Constitution, not just as a national document, but as a universal charter of liberty. Its principles, life, liberty, due process, freedom of speech, property rights, checks and balances, become the legal and moral blueprint for colonies on the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Bill of Rights for all worlds. Every human settlement, whether on Earth, a Martian colony, or an orbital habitat, guarantees freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and enterprise. Decentralized self-governance. Colonies adopt local charters rooted in constitutional law, allowing for localized self-rule while remaining united under a broader interplanetary federation. AI as guardian and servant of liberty. AI in this future is not an overlord but a servant of human freedom, designed to operate within constitutional constraints. Constitutional AI framework. All AI systems are embedded with constitutional principles, ensuring they respect civil liberties and do not override human will or due process. AI judicial systems. AI helps administer justice impartially across worlds, reducing bias, corruption, and inefficiency, while still allowing human oversight. AI in democracy. Citizens use AI to analyze legislation, predict outcomes, and monitor government transparency, making participatory democracy stronger and more informed. Free enterprise as the engine of expansion. Capitalism, under the rule of law, drives the expansion into space, not as exploitation but as opportunity for all. Private space industry, companies, small and large, build habitats, launch platforms, mining operations, and terraforming systems, regulated only to prevent harm and monopolies. Entrepreneurial frontiers. Individuals start new businesses on Mars, design orbital cities, or develop AI services for asteroid farming, powered by competition and innovation. Property rights in space. Under constitutional law, settlers are granted property rights to land and resources they develop, ensuring reward for risk and investment. A civilization of sovereign individuals. In this cosmic civilization, sovereignty lies not with the state but the individual. Freedoms are not granted, they are inherent. Digital citizenship. Individuals carry secure, AI-protected digital identities that preserve their rights and history across planetary jurisdictions. Interplanetary free speech zones. Speech and expression remain unregulated by planetary governments, protected by law and AI moderation algorithms aligned with the First Amendment. Space homesteading acts. Much like America's westward expansion, individuals are incentivized to settle, cultivate, and innovate on new worlds, protected by law and rewarded by enterprise. Challenges and harmony. AI ethics enforcement. An interplanetary constitutional court, assisted by AI but governed by humans, ensures AI systems never overreach. Balancing enterprise and ecology. Free enterprise is bound by constitutional environmental stewardship clauses to preserve the natural beauty of new worlds. Cultural diversity within unity. While the constitutional framework is universal, colonies retain their own cultural identities, customs, and local governance, mirroring the federalist balance of the original American system. The United States is a beacon of liberty in the cosmos. In this future, the United States becomes not an empire but an ideal, its constitution serving as the philosophical compass for a multi-world civilization. It leads not by conquest but by principle, inspiring other planetary federations to adopt systems based on individual liberty, free markets, and moral governance. Thus, in a universe where AI ensures justice, free enterprise powers progress, and constitutional rights protect all, humanity expands not just outward, but upward, in dignity, freedom, and hope. Conclusion. The path from collapse to integration. Borders collapse not just by war, but when people abandon the idea of their nation, when they migrate, surrender, or seek new futures elsewhere. Sovereignty dies when the population no longer believes in it. A new model of sovereignty exchange, land and resources in return for access and protection, could allow stronger nations like the United States to absorb failing states peacefully and purposefully. And eventually, as AI and automation reshape the world, the need for borders may disappear entirely. Replaced by a united human